Hey everyone, Ron here. I recently started playing Battlefield 4 again, so you'll see some random BF4 footage in the background. Now there's something I really wanted to talk to you guys about. I've had a few discussions with people lately about how important your frame rate is when playing a multiplayer shooter such as Planetside 2 or Battlefield 4. And the general consensus I've run into seems to be that yes, FPS is important, but it's not something you should really focus on when trying to improve. I completely disagree. Frame rate is the single easiest and most important thing you can change when trying to improve at any multiplayer shooter. Now I'm going to break this down into two parts. I'm going to start off with the why, and then I will go to the what. And you'll see what I mean once I get there, so stick with me. Part 1 I'm referring to as mechanical advantage. There is a saying that is often attributed to Archimedes. He says, "Give me a lever and a place to stand, and I will move the whole world." Or something like that. I've heard about 50 different versions. The point being, Archimedes is saying, with the proper leverage given to him by a long enough lever, he would be able to move the world despite his relatively small size. Now, there is a lever that would allow him to move it, and then there is an even longer lever that would allow him to move it easily. If you have a choice in the matter, you'll obviously choose the easier option. There's no point in choosing the harder option. Why would you even do that? I applied this logic to gaming. When trying to improve at any FPS game, you want to set yourself up in the best possible environment to do so. Having both a computer and a monitor that are capable of presenting the game to you at an FPS greater than 60 is that environment. That is the easier lever. Trying to play multiplayer FPS games at less than 60 FPS is like choosing the harder lever. You wouldn't choose to play an FPS game with a track pad or a track ball. If anyone remembers those, I'm probably dating myself there. So if you have the ability, why would you choose to play at less than 60 FPS? You shouldn't. Now, of course, not everyone is in a financial situation to be able to purchase a 980 Ti or the new 1080 that just came out, a 144 Hz monitor, etc., etc. However, this doesn't mean you can't prioritize FPS. Turn the settings down. Keep turning them down until you get as close to the refresh rate of your monitor as possible, which for most people is 60 FPS. This includes changing the resolution. Having a 1080p HD monitor looks great. Play your single-player games at 1080p and love them. But it does absolutely squat to have your settings at 1920 by 1080 in a multiplayer shooter if your computer isn't capable of rendering that resolution at 60 FPS. You're making the game prettier while simultaneously putting yourself at a disadvantage for no reason. And if you're trying to improve, that makes no sense. That's like trying to improve at baseball by swinging a wiffle bat instead of a real baseball bat. Now at this point you may be saying to yourself, Ron, you've told me that FPS is important, but why? What's the big deal? Well, that leads me into my next part. Part 2. Now before I begin, I just want to preface this by saying this is an extremely complicated subject. Monitor technology is some science wizardry that amazes me every time I read about it. Now, just a fair warning that this is going to be a very basic explanation, but I will be including links in the description if you want to read more about it. So there's two factors at play here when it comes to gaming. Number 1 is frame separation, and number 2 is motion blur. Here in the background you will see a GIF or a GIF I made of one of my Battlefield 4 recordings, and it's at 10 FPS. It's extremely choppy. Now this is an extreme example, but it illustrates what people perceive as smoothness when looking at a higher FPS monitor. Each frame in this GIF has space between it where action happened, but the frames weren't included, so the action never made it to your eye. To illustrate what I mean in a little bit more detail, here are two stills from that same GIF. Still number 1, still number 2. Now, as you can see, between the two frames, the enemy here moved, but the action wasn't included, as those frames are missing. This is especially obvious as if you look at the position of his head between the two pictures. It moves from the right side of the railing to behind the railing. Now imagine trying to aim at someone like that. It's just like trying to aim at someone that is lagging or rubber banding all over the place. If he was to change direction during those missing frames, you'd have to wait until the next frame actually displayed his change in direction to to even begin to react to change your aim. Now you're missing. Now, obviously, as I said, this is an extreme example, but it appropriately illustrates what I'm talking about. Going from 30 to 60 to 120 to 144 FPS, each step up in frame rate and refresh rate means less missing information and the information getting to your eyes faster. This allows you to respond that much faster. Now, this effect is lessened as you go higher in frame rate, meaning you get less of a benefit going from 120 to 144 as you do from 30 to 60. But there is also another major effect at play here. Motion blur. Just a setting that you always turn off in every game? Nope, not in this case. Modern LCD monitors force motion blur onto you, whether you like it or not. Have you ever heard of a monitor's response rate or response time? Response time is how long it takes for the monitor to change the color of a pixel on your screen. If the response time of your monitor is high, it means that a fast-moving image will ghost. This is a phenomenon caused by the image moving faster than the pixels can refresh, leaving a trail of still changing pixels in its wake. This problem is less of an issue with modern monitors having refresh rates as low as 1 to 2 milliseconds, but it is still something to keep in mind. The current major issue is how LCD monitors handle their backlighting. An old CRT monitor would only light pixels momentarily as it displayed them. This is different from a modern LCD display that has a constantly illuminated backlight. This backlight creates a phenomena called eye-tracking motion blur. A modern LCD display constantly displays information because the backlight never changes. Once a pixel is refreshed, it holds and keeps displaying that image information until the next refresh. When tracking a fast-moving object across your screen, your eyes are constantly moving, even during one of those refreshes, tracking that object. This causes you to perceive a motion blur as your eye frantically tries to track these still images being flashed in front of your eyes. And this, again, is where a higher refresh plays a huge role. Going from 60 to 120 results in a significantly reduced blur, as static images are being displayed for half the duration, and your eyes are seeing an increased number of images, massively reducing the motion blur. Now, what does this all mean? Well, it means that with a higher refresh rate and a higher frame rate, you get a clearer image of what you're looking at, especially during fast motion, like when you're turning, or when somebody's running across your screen. A clearer image allows more accuracy on your part, which again brings us to the easier lever. The clearer and smoother you can make the game, the easier it will be for you to aim and acquire targets. What this means is by simply upping your frame rate, you've improved your ability to aim. With nothing more than hardware changes and or setting changes, you've made it easier for you to shoot mans in the face, and you've set yourself up with the right environment to be as effective as possible. As I said before, if you want to learn more about LCD monitors and motion blur, I've put a couple of links in the description below. And if you want to see more videos like this, please hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching, and man am I glad that's off my chest.